Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are streaming from. I welcome you to our discussion tonight. My name is Jamie Hoyt, and I will be your host for tonight's discussion. For the entire month of November, Smart Term is celebrating Parent Month. Parents are our first teachers, and their role in our lives is paramount. Tonight's interview featuring two distinguished guests, Ayodele Pompey, the CEO of SmartTerm, and Fanta Williams, Government Relations at Digicel, both of whom are parents and are quite qualified to share on this particular topic. Today, we delve into a crucial and multifaceted aspect of human life, the role and function of a parent. Parenting is a universal experience and transcends cultural, geographical, and societal boundaries. It's a journey filled of joys, challenges, and lifelong experiences. Ayodele and Fanta brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to our discussion, and together we aim to explore the intricate and essential component of effective parenting, drawing from their unique perspective and experience. So let me bring them to this live stream. Welcome, Ayodele. Welcome, Fanta. It's such a wonderful uh, time to have you all here to join us for this topic. Any opening remarks? I want to pass it right over to Ayodele, to grace us this night.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us into this live talk about parents. Parenting is such an important role. Depends on how you look at it. Parents shape the future of the world, right? As we shape the leaders of tomorrow. And so I think this conversation, this discussion is quite timely. So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to our discussion.
Awesome, wonderful, and Fanta.
Well, thank you for having me, Jamie, and it's a pleasure to be sharing the floor with you, Ayodele. I mean, these are conversations that we have kind of all the time
Yeah.
as parents, and I think for me, I think what I would say immediately is the role of the parent is changing. It's as dynamic as the educational landscape is, um, and so it's finding a balance between keeping the best
Mhm.
of what our education system is and then infusing it with all of the wonderful innovation and technology that is really emerging now. And as parents, we need to understand how to navigate that best and how to be a partner and an ally in our children's education and allow them to celebrate the joy of learning. I think at the baseline, that's the fundamental thing is if we teach our children to enjoy learning, they'll be lifelong learners, and that is a prerequisite now for success in this new world that we live in. So I think it's critical that we instill that in our children.
I totally, totally agree. Again, for our viewing audience, we have audience from LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as Facebook. Feel free to interact with us via the chat. Let us know if you have any questions for Ayodele and for Fanta. Any comments, anything that stands out to you tonight. Feel free to let us know, and we can share with all our viewing audience. Again, our topic tonight is the role and function of the parent, and we want to go straight into it, right? Um, Ayodele, Fanta, you all have been parents, for some years now. Ayodele, I know you have four children, Fanta, two as well.
Mhm.
And really and truly, I want to ask you all tonight, what of a parent in a child's life, simple and basic as it is, and how does it evolve as the child grows? Who
Well,
wants to? Okay,
absolutely.
Ayodele.
So great question. And I like how you mentioned and that in terms of how does the role of the parent evolve as the child grows, because that is exactly what happens. The role of the parent is dynamic, not only based on the stage of life that the children are, are at, but also in terms of the different types of personalities that we have.
Mm-hmm.
I have 4 kids, so I have to learn them. I have to study each of them, and I can't use a one size fit all approach to parenting. I have to, fashion my own parenting style based on the needs and the love language of the child, so that we can, support them along life's journey. And ultimately, I think the role of parents is to shape um, the adults and leaders of tomorrow. That's our kids, and just generally, um, I don't know any parent who does not want the very best for their child. Every parent wants their child to achieve their highest potential, and so along the way, whether it's early childhood or in middle of growing up or adolescent or even as adults, right? We want to be able to provide the community, the support, the relationship, to drive, the development of an adult that can contribute to society, and that is capable, and also one that has compassion or empathy, and is able to sustain lifelong relationships. So these are some of the things that I would consider as the role of the parent.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Idol. Let's hear from Fanta.
I mean, all excellent points. I mean, tremendously excellent points. And I would add to that that there's a real need for the whole person, right? As a parent, I don't know if your job is as much to frame or to mold children as it is to allow them to discover who they are as people. I think every child has innate talents and gifts, and I think sometimes it's just creating the environment in which these gifts and talents can be brought to the forefront. And so, that's, I think, creates the greatest challenge for parents. It's always being aware, right? It's seeing those kind of glimmers of interest in your children. They're curious about, certain things over others. They're interested in certain things over others, and it's figuring out how to take that information and then help to, navigate them on their journey to adulthood. And it's not easy. But it's a tremendous. I think there's no more greater a role, than to be able to, to parent a child, and see them reach their full potential. I think it's the greatest work any human being can ever have the privilege of doing.
Absolutely, well said.
Awesome, awesome. I think all the points that you all mentioned are some really, really good points, and the role of the parents is evolving, and just just what it is parents have to teach their children now, given the fact that there's so much a cultural and societal factors that influences their children. So I want to jump straight into that particular aspect of parenting. How has different influences has changed your parenting style? Because that saying that we would have known long time, it takes a village to raise a child. We now
Mhm,
seeing that there's so much societal factors, there's technology, there's social media, all these different
mhm,
type of things that comes
mhm,
into play. How has
mhm.
that changed your style or your role and function as a parent?
If I'll go first on this one, Ayo. I think
Yeah.
there's two things. I was fortunate enough to grow up in two different educational systems. So my
Mm-hmm.
fundamental years I spent in Trinidad in a small community, Point Fortin. My father was a teacher, his sister was a teacher. So I grew up in a house of educators. And
Yes.
somehow, as much as when I left Trinidad when I was 11 and I went to Canada where I was born and went into that school system, what's always stayed with me is the quality of the education I got in the Caribbean. And so, when I had the opportunity to make a decision about where my life path was going to take me, I decided I really wanted to come back to the Caribbean and raise my children here,
Yeah.
in the Caribbean, because I really fundamentally felt that there's something about a Caribbean education worth protecting. It's something worth celebrating. So I think, that in the traditional sense, I think the culture of how we teach in the Caribbean, I think is a good thing. We're teaching children grit. We're teaching them to be resilient. We're teaching them to be dynamic. Now, what we need to do now is not lose any of the intrinsic great things about our Caribbeanness, but then
Yeah.
use technology as a way to amplify and augment the system that already exists. And I think what has happened is, coming out of the pandemic, we really laid bare some of the fragility of the education system in our region, whether it be, a lack of connectivity, whether it be mobile or home broadband, the quality of that connectivity when you do have it, having the right devices, having teachers who really can, manipulate their teaching and their training in a digital format. Like all of those things we now know we were challenged with, but we were also willing to fail fast and
Yeah.
move forward, and still I think accomplish great things during that period. What I see now is that if we can take and distill all of the great things we learned about all the pain points that we discovered during that period and turn that into a digital format or a digital plan that can transform the educational system, I think that's the priority. And so it's not to lose who we are, it's to retain that, because I think fundamentally that's the beauty of living where we do. I think this still is a region where I think teachers are respected and edified. People still desire to become teachers, they're passionate about teaching. And I think that's something that's culturally very unique for us as well. We just need to reskill them and retool them to be able to prepare our students for what the future is requiring of them.
Definitely. Yeah. You go ahead, Idol. Yeah.
Yeah, Afanta, you've said a mouthful. You've said a lot of things, right?
Yes.
I'm going to attempt to respond to a few of them, all right?
Mhm.
Well, when it comes to parenting, I think that we have to be cognizant of the future world and realities that our kids are going to,
Mm-hmm.
are going to live in, right, and be
Agree.
a part of. And so I think that when we think about the culture or the other factors that can influence our style of parenting, we have to take into consideration, the time we're living in, right? And we're living in a time that is rapidly evolving. Just last year, we had AI, boom, just come on the scene. I mean, it was around for a while, but OpenAI brought out ChatGPT, and it has just sprung into mainstream, use. And so we look at the future and we're seeing that there's so many technologies on the horizon to really expand things like the metaverse. We talked about AI already, virtual reality, augmented reality, spatial computing, all of these different things. And we're realizing that our kids who we have now will have to exist in a future that is highly digitized. Right.
Yeah.
And so we also have to think then about what are the skills, the knowledge, the competencies, the values, the attitudes that we need to instill in our kids, so that they are able to thrive and and strive in the future. Now, so that brings me to a very important point that I want to punctuate tonight, because I think we
Mm-hmm.
have to make a distinction between education and schooling, right? And so Fanta referred to, alluded to, how amazing our school system is, and absolutely right. A lot of our students, they leave our shores, they go out and they spread their wings, and they're among the best wherever they go. And so what we realize is that our school system has has the ability to instill a lot of the values, the attitudes, the knowledge, the skills that are required. But I want to point to the fact that there's so much more, right? And in your introduction, Jamie, you talked about parents as being the first teacher. As a matter of
Yes.
fact, I think that parents are the head teacher for their children. Like, they have a responsibility
Mm-hmm.
to ensure that their kids have the right education, right, across the board. And when we talk about education now, we're talking about it from a holistic perspective. Because in order for our kids to strive in the future, they need to, we want our kids to have leadership ability, critical thinking,
Yes.
be able to communicate. We want them to have empathy and emotional intelligence. We want them to have, financial literacy. We want them to have the digital literacy they're going to need to really capitalize on the opportunities of the future. So there's so many other things that you may not get from your schooling that needs to be part of your education. And I think that parents need to be cognizant of this and recognize the importance of these skills, and look for avenues and opportunities
Mhm.
to teach our their kids, or to ensure that they develop these habits or these skills and competencies, these attitudes. And I think particularly when it comes to values and attitudes, those are going to be like the things that allow our kids to really achieve success in the future. So I think we
Mhm.
have to spend a lot of time there. I don't know if you would want to respond to that, Fanta.
No, I think you're right. I think the hard skills are not, they're accessible,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And everybody can, you can get them this any way. I mean, online, face to face. I mean, education, hard education is not difficult to deliver. What differentiates us now is all of those what we call the soft skills,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? And the ability to be empathetic, the ability to have grit and veritas and be resilient. You know,
Correct.
um, there's so much talk, and I've been listening to a lot of things said by Carolyn Wanga. She's the CEO of Essence, and she talks so fluently about the beauty of failure and how important failure is. Because as a culture, we are averse to failure. We think, okay, well,
Yeah.
if you fail, it's over. It's fatal. And what we're seeing that is the ability to fail and then recover from failure expeditiously is actually critical to success, not just in school, but through life. And if you think about children in the first 5 years, they're learning to walk, they're learning to talk. It's a series, it's a myriad of failures, beautiful failures, that lead them to the ability to walk and run, lead them to babbling, to language. And so, you know, we have to celebrate that willingness to get it wrong, to get it right, and also to not celebrate the need for perfection, right? Because what we need to celebrate is authenticity, and
Wow.
that comes from
Yeah.
vulnerability. And so, even as adults, what I do with my children is if I have, they see me struggle, right? And they see me recover. And I think that's very important. I'm not saying that you want to share every ill with your children, but if your
Yeah.
children see you, have to pivot from, something that's been an adversity and see you overcome it, that's actually as much a lesson in resilience as if you opened a book and read it to them. And so it's understanding how to give of yourself, of your true self to them, so that they get to know you as people. And that's something too, generationally, that wasn't always the case. Like we didn't even think our parents were people. I don't know what we thought they were, but we thought they were humans or aliens. I don't know. But I think what you're finding is, the intersection of generations and technology and just the level at which our children are developing, right, is making it necessary for us to bring our best selves to the game. But sometimes our best selves to our game is bringing our true selves, you
Yeah.
know? So, and allowing them to see that you can recover from things even when you don't always get them right. Um,
Absolutely.
and I learn from my children when I do that. They're so encouraging. They give me a lot of grace. And then with that, I'm able to show them, how powerful it is to be able to deliver that kind of empathy to somebody else.
That's brilliant. No, I love
Yeah.
that. Absolutely love that. I mean, if I was just to jump off of what you just spoke about there, Fanta, it's the whole notion of modeling some attributes, because everything can't be taught, through,
Through a
speaking,
book or
right?
yeah.
Yeah, through verbally, exposing
Mhm,
them to certain knowledge. A
mhm,
lot of times, our kids just naturally model their parents, right?
mhm,
And
Pattern
so
behaviors.
modeling resilience is so important. Modeling empathy is so important. Modeling those attributes, those skills are so important, and I've realized it. Like I can speak to my kids, because I talk a lot, and then I'll come back to that in a bit. I talk a lot.
Yeah.
I sit them down, I explain a lot of things about life and about people and about systems and how things work and about history and about who we are as people, our identity and so forth. And sometimes, sometimes I can feel like I'm speaking and it's not really, they're not really understanding. But as soon as I model something, they pick it up so effortlessly and
Mm-hmm.
they run with it. So I think, the point that you are making there is so critically important as parents to model. When we were growing up, there was a thing we used to say, do as I say and not as I do, right? But we're living in a world where it can't work like that anymore. It doesn't work like that,
No.
right? As parents, we have to model. I remember some years ago, we did some research, right? I think it was during the pandemic. And we asked the question in terms of, to parents, what's the number
Yeah.
one thing you're concerned about where your kids and their education is concerned? And it was a huge insight for me. It was a watershed moment as well because, the responses we got, I didn't expect. Over
Right.
90% of parents are really concerned about their kids' mental health, their ability to
Right.
cope with setbacks and their resilience and their ability just to adapt to differences, things that change. Because life, the only constant in life is change. And as we realize, even in the workforce, what's happening now is that AI is going to be, making a lot of jobs, less available. And in some cases, you're going to,
Yeah.
some jobs are not going to be available in the next couple of years. And so if you spent, 18 years studying this particular thing, you have your qualification, you studied so hard, and you go out in the workforce and that job doesn't exist anymore, how do you respond? How do you adapt? And I think these are some of the soft skills that Fanta mentioned and
Yes.
are so critically important, right? Um, so yeah, I think this is a very important aspect of parenting.
Right. I think we're seeing a lot of things coming out from this particular topic in the sense of, cultural values. We're seeing technology influencing parenting styles. We're seeing that, parents may need to evolve and may need to switch up their parenting styles and look at different skills, that will enhance the growth and development
Mhm.
of their child. And
Mhm.
and we're also seeing that there's a thin line between parents and then parents as teachers and how that translate into education,
Mhm.
right? I want to ask the panel tonight, what are the three, if you can give me top three main skills, be it soft skills, be it hard skills or whatever, what are the top three skills you think that students need right now for the time we're living in?
Want me to go first,
Well,
Harry?
well, that's a difficult question because you restricted it to three.
I know, I know. I'm
I
I
trying
mean,
to
mean,
there's
box
no
them.
right or wrong
I'm
answer,
trying to
but
box
just
them.
yeah,
based on your
Actually,
experience, what you
yeah,
feel.
let me take a kick at it. I'm gonna
sure.
go at it. I think the first thing is knowledge of self,
Yeah.
right? I think you have, and not just knowledge of self like your personality or like,
Hmm.
I'm a Gemini. I'm not talking that kind of. I'm saying knowledge of self, your history, your identity, where you've come from, who you are,
Right.
right? Who you're becoming. I think, you know, as people, Caribbean people and as people of the African diaspora, I think it's critical now that we start to
Hmm.
understand who we are as a people, right? Our indigenous history and all of these things, the true history, the real history. Because so much of it, I think, sometimes has marred us in a belief that, we're meant to suffer and it's always going to be stressful and we can't get where we're going and we're too small to be great. And some of those ideologies are, they're awash now. I think technology is leveling the playing field in a lot of ways, but the only way to be able to capitalize on that is to know who you are as a person, and the
Right.
younger we can get individuals to start to understand that and root themselves in the pride of self. I think you start to be able to overlay compassion and resilience and empathy and grit and all of those important things. But it starts
Right.
with, the wholeness of the human, right? The other thing is critical thinking, because there's so access to so much information, so many platforms. Everybody's got a point of view, everybody's pushing a point of view. And so the
Yes.
ability to be critical in your thinking and your understanding of the information that is coming at you at milliseconds, in so many different ways, I think is becoming even more critical, right? You need to have an opinion about things, but what is that opinion rooted in? If it's rooted in, I want to be nice, or I want people to be my friend, or I want to go along with the crowd, that's not critical thinking. How do you are able to stand on your truth? So I think the
Right.
ability to teach critical thinking is important. And then you need skills, right? And master something. I think
Yes.
we get into this belief that you can just be a generalist, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, because I'm a generalist, but I have certain things that I believe I'm exceptionally good at, and I've
Mm-hmm.
honed those things, and I've made them my offering to the world, I guess is how I would put it, right? So get mastery of something, um, and that will create the passion that creates the opportunity for you to turn that into a way for you to build a life, to have a career. Because if we go with the traditional things about, oh, doctor, lawyer, and so much of that is going to change, right? It's not changing immediately, but in the next 5, 10, 15 years, those jobs will not look like they did, right? So as parents, you can't just tell them, well, go to medical school to be a doctor and everything will be great. Well, we don't know, by the time they graduate from high school, go to university, 8 years, 10 years residency, etc. It may not look like how it looks now, right? So if
Exactly.
we allow them to be able to get mastery of the things that they're good at, because I think every human being has something that they are gifted to do. If you are able to identify what that is within yourselves, and then you can couple that with hard skills, right? I think you get the magic of what it is you're supposed to do with your life, right? And
Mhm.
that's why I spend my time with people who are smarter than me. And I tell my children that all the time. If you're the smartest person in your circle, get a new circle. Be
Mhm.
around people who are going to challenge the way you see the world and how you think. And that doesn't happen if everybody around you thinks like you and looks like you and has the same interests, right? You need to clash against difference. And so when you do that, then you start to be able to self-identify, who you are. So, I mean, those things aren't necessarily like, course 101, but I think if you're
Yeah.
going to give me the three things to work on, Jamie, I would say that leads to everything else.
Exactly. I totally agree with that, Fanta. Really good, solid points there. Idol, you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, sure, sure. I thank you, Fanta, for taking care of those three, so I can introduce another three.
Bring your own tree, Idol.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think, and these things work together. Yeah, these
Yeah.
things work together. I think one of the first things that we need to have as a skill is to learn how to learn. Right. We live in a world now where you can't just go to school and think that that's it for the rest of your life. I've got my degree and that's it. We need to now focus on lifelong learning, right?
Lifelong learning.
And now we have this wonderful resource at our disposal called the internet and generative AI and all these different technologies at our disposal. And the ability to learn is going to be a key skill if we're going to navigate life. All right.
Mhm.
There's always going to be something that you need to learn. And in some cases, you have to learn it quickly. And the ability to learn on your own and be able to quickly synthesize a lot of information and be able to,
Mhm,
to articulate the key points and
mhm,
begin to be conversant in a
mhm,
particular area. You may not have a degree in it, but that
Mhm.
ability to quickly learn something is going to be a super important skill.
mhm.
I think the other thing in that, the other skill that I would say is leadership. I think, at a smart term, we fundamentally believe that, every child is born with purpose and has potential, right? And in some way, shape, or form, leadership skills help us to navigate the world to the point where we're able to achieve self-actualization and be able to achieve success. And so those leadership skills are going to be so important. And I say leadership skills, and it's a I've kind of I've kind of hacked my way to including additional skills, because things such as self-awareness, things um, such as communication,
Mm-hmm.
such as empathy and
Yeah.
emotional intelligence are going to be so important, because I believe once you have those skills, your life can be super impactful,
Mhm.
right? And this is why it's so important as parents for us to, not be too rigid with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Fanta alluded to this earlier. We have to help them discover who they are and what their calling in life is, all right? And so forth. So I think that's an incredibly important skill. Another skill that I think is going to be super important in future is digital literacy, right?
Yes.
We live in a world where we're constantly bombarded by, things like social media, for example. How do our kids, how are they going to take in a piece of information and be able to validate whether it's true or not? We have so much fake news going around, and social media kind of plays on this confirmation bias, and you can live in this echo chamber if you're not careful, and it can guide you to kind of developing the wrong ideas, the wrong perspectives. And in some ways, this links back to critical thinking, right? But digital skills in terms of how to use technology in a safe way that doesn't put yourself at in harm's way,
Right.
and so forth. There's so many social engineering attacks that are going on, in terms of phishing and so forth. And how do you protect yourself online? How do you use technology? What are the mental models you're creating as a person, so that when the new technology comes on stream, that you're able to adapt quickly and be able to capitalize on whatever opportunities these presents. I think digital literacy is absolutely going to be critical for the future.
Awesome. Parents, I hope you all are listening and taking notes, because these 6 points outlined by Fanta and Iodel, once implemented the right way, your child will be a powerhouse. These are the skills and the things that we need to really mold and teach them as they grow. But I want to take some time now to look at our viewing audience, remind them that the discussion tonight is on the role and the function of the parent. And we have some our audience coming from Bahamas, as well as Antigua and Bermuda, sorry. Also from the United States, Jamaica, Trinidad, and Tobago. And we also have some questions. I want to put this question up and for our panelists to share their views on it. So this question is coming from Patsy Matthews. She's asking, how does the panel feel about the addition of a program about the Black experience globally, so the media myths can be dispelled even within the Caribbean and Africa, and etc.
Well, Fanta, this is right up your alley. So I think you can
Yeah,
do the work you're doing across our region, because this is right up your alley. Go ahead.
it's so true. So, gosh, a number of different projects I'm working on. This has come up, and I think
Right.
that's the beauty of what I see digitization as. And I mean, we've talked about this ideally even within the context of smart turn, is the ability for us to finally, you know, introduce the true history, right? I mean, our educational system, while it has strengths, it's also still rooted in colonial ideals, right? Which
Yeah.
is born out of a slave experience. So it's one version of the truth, right? It's one version of our experience. And it's a bit one dimensional. Um, what I see as an opportunity is as we integrate digitization into education, we it gives us a chance to kind of what I would say, quote unquote, right some wrongs, um,
Yeah.
in terms of how some of these stories have been told, the intensity or the vastness with which they've been told or not been told. I think of the stories of our indigenous peoples, the stories of how Columbus discovered the New World. All of these things are not necessarily, they're not accurate, right? But we haven't found a way to intersect that into the curriculum. And I think digitization can do that in a very beautiful way because it can bring it to life in a way that I don't think students would have been able to do it before. Now, a lot of people are seeking the truth about a lot of things. I mean, it's incredible the climate that we're currently in. Um, so I think there's a lot of that already happening, but I do believe that our ability to put that into platforms that are accessible to everybody, and allows people to interact. And also addresses how people learn. Not everybody learns by reading. Some people learn, they're visual learners. Some people, as Ayodelia and I have talked about, is this idea of gamification. And you could gamify history in a
Yeah.
way that makes it the ability to connect it to a lot of people in different ways. You can also, you can build avatars and all of these things that allows children, even from a young age, to start to reconnect with some of these stories. So I think it's critically important. It goes back to the idea of knowledge of self and understanding of self. I
Mm-hmm.
just know that we can't do it in the traditional context. I think what we have to do is find a new way to introduce that information to the masses. And I think digitization and different platforms and programs that allow it to live in that digital world, it'll also help us retain that history. Because believe it or not, if you talk to elders, people who've been on the forefront of reparation fights,
Right.
or who have been some of our revolutionaries, within our countries and communities, are saying that the stories are going to get lost. When I go, you know, leaders who are in their 60s and 70s and 80s, when they're gone, who's how have we recorded the importance of what came before them? And
Yeah.
so I do believe that that's the way to do it. I hope that answers the question. I don't know if it does, but that's how I would position it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, and even to the next question, Patsy, how does
Uh,
education
Maybe I'd like an opportunity to respond to this as
yeah,
well.
sure.
All right.
Yeah.
So I like where Fanta was going with this. I'm not sure. The question specifically asked about the Black experience globally. I think there's no one right answer. I think there needs to be a
Right.
multiplicity of programs and different initiatives. Because I think you know in the Caribbean, I read an article recently, and it was about the fact that there's an identity crisis among our kids, and if you think about how our kids are now growing up from very young, they're into their games, they're into their devices, they're into YouTube, and a lot of them are not being educated about who we are as people and how valuable we are, you know. Um, and so I think it's so important for parents to lay that foundation to have those conversations. And so, you know, I want to punctuate that point very clearly because as parents, I think it's our responsibility to ensure that we set that foundation. We
Yeah.
expose our children to who we are as people, our history.
Hmm.
And yes, I do agree. We need to democratize education. So parents, yes, you can introduce the topic. You don't have to be. You shouldn't need to be an expert on the topic because there should be materials readily available online that you can point to. I said,
Hmm.
watch this
Right.
video, do this course, and even in a gamified environment, because we know our kids, they like rewards. And so if it's in a gamified environment, then they're more likely to be motivated to actually learn it. I remember some years ago when I was at CXC, you know, we identified the issue where there was a declining number of signups for history, and we wanted to to really encourage more students across the Caribbean to sign up for history, because we realize if we don't do anything, that we're going to have problems, existential problems, and identity problems later on in life. And so I don't think there's one program we need to have. I think that program that Patsy mentioned would be excellent, but I think we need to have a lot more of it. And it needs to be something that the children learn pieces of throughout their life, and not just one
Hmm.
10-week program. I don't
Exactly.
think that's enough, right? So no, so definitely, I think we need to do something about
Hmm.
that issue.
Awesome. And we have a comment here from Jam Jam. She's saying, I see so much of myself in my daughter, and so I'm relearning too. As Idol said, to be patient and showing empathy, and not just talking about being better, but also showing her how to be better. Also, even my approach to learning, we have to show and not just always tell them. Totally agree, Amanda. Amanda is also agreeing to this particular statement.
Yeah,
But I
absolutely.
Any
love that.
Yeah,
I
this relates to your first point as well, Idel.
love.
Yeah.
And you know what's so funny is the technical guy, right? It's the technical guy that's talking all about feeling and emotion and the soft stuff. But that shows you that it the soft skills drive the hard skills, right?
Yeah,
Digitization. Nathan Furs is, I guess, one of the preeminent experts. He teaches at NCAD. He's a professor at NCAD, and I did a training with him through Digicel, and he talks about digitization is not about just making stuff digital, making it
yeah,
fancy, making it electronic. It's about solving problems, right? And the only way for you to solve problems through digitization is to be sensitive enough to be able to identify
the
what
problem.
those problems are. So when we look at people who are into technology and focus their lives on building apps and all of these things, the technology is really, it's head and heart combined, right? They've seen something that needs to fundamentally change, which is about self-awareness, and it's about problem solving, and it's about seeking truth, and being inquisitive and asking why. And then they're using that now and taking their technical acumen, which is what their mastery is, right? And they're
Yeah,
taking that and they're putting the two together. And so I say that to say that, you know, if you it's you have to look at what your children are into, you know, look at what they're passionate about, right? And then help them just be great at that. And then within that, again, you'll become that which you're supposed to be. And so, even for myself, my children see me, I'm always taking either classes or I'm reading or I'm finding out something. And now, what I do is when I find out something that I didn't know before, I'll go to them and say, "Did you know this?"
yeah,
Sometimes they tell me, "Yes, mom." And I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
where have I been?" It's just that again, it's my ability to digest change is going to be very different from their ability, right? They're in constant change. We have been too, but not at the pace that it's happening now. But when I learn something, or I'm inquisitive, or something excites me, I talk to them about it. And so again, it's building that kind of muscle memory around being constantly curious, right?
hmm
You know, that's super important to letting them understand that the idea of school or learning, it doesn't always happen in the classroom. It happens outside the classroom. It happens online. It happens with your friends. And so when you do that, then you can be judicious about
yeah,
the information that you allow into your environment, right? Because you're like, I don't even know if I want to know about that. And so you start to exclude things like the gossip and some of that kind of stuff that also exists, right? Because we're enamored with everybody's business, not just culturally, but globally.
yeah,
That's just the nature of what's happening in the world. So the discernment around all of the information that you're getting access to is a critical skill that they need to learn probably younger now than they did before.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when we just started out and tonight, we talked about and the role of the parent. We talked about how it evolved.
Yeah.
At some point, you know, you- as parents, we need to become our kids' coach. Somewhere around that 12, 13, 14, when we're preparing them to be adults, we need to come alongside them and be their coach, allow them to explore things, allow them to make
Hmm.
mistakes, allow them to make some decisions and so forth, and then be able to come alongside them, not from authoritarian perspective, but to come alongside them and be able
Guy,
to
yeah.
speak wisdom, be able to guide them, help them. One of the things, and I like how Jam puts it, because like a lot of my own development came from me being a parent, and from me understanding that I don't have the skills I need to be a good parent. And so there's this continuous learning, all right. And so one of the skills I've picked up is really how to ask good questions, because I want them to discover a lot of these things. I want them to navigate their
Hmm.
own thought life. And so asking them questions that allow them to reflect on their own thinking and on their own reasoning ability helps them to start to flex those muscles, right?
Mm-hmm.
That decision making muscles, those critical thinking muscles, etc., that really allow them to make independent decisions, that take into consideration not only how they feel,
Mm-hmm.
how is this going to affect X and how it's going to affect Y, and what would happen to this, and have you considered that, and allowing them to make the decision, but by you kind of coaching them along the way. And I think it is so important. And so there are two things there. There's that relationship and coaching aspect, but there's also, as the parent, this need to constantly evolve, constantly learn. I think earlier, Fantu was alluding to the point where we have to like learn the things that our kids are doing, right? Because one of the most dangerous things that I see, um, that can happen if we're not careful as parents, is that we can allow our kids to exist in a reality where we are not. So, for example, if we allow our kids to be parented by devices, they're watching YouTube.
Right.
YouTube works. You start off watching one particular video, and then the
Hmm.
video ends, and there are all these recommendations, or on the left you'll see, or the right, sorry, you'll see a bunch of different videos, and there's that clicking habit that they've already developed, and if you are not there as a parent to guide, if you just leave them, you can, one day you wake up and you don't recognize your own child.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing
Exactly.
some of these games, and they're talking to people from across the globe. And if you are not careful, if you are not really, focusing on your child, you can get to a point where you don't even have an influence over your child. Like, you're talking to them, and you're like an alien to them,
Yeah.
right? And so I think it's so important, to also be a part of their world, learn the things that they're doing. If they love a game, like literally, I when my kids, if my kids want to install an app, they have to come to me, or they have to, it's connected. So when they want to install an app, I get a notification, and before I approve it, if I don't know what it is, I go research it. Because I'm very cautious with what my kids are being fed with, intellectually, spiritually, emotionally. So I'm very concerned about all of that. And so, yes, as parents, we have to be committed to lifelong learning and evolving. And part of that has to do with respect as well. Listening to our kids, it is so important. Being able to have a conversation and listen to their feelings. Their feelings may not be valid. And I know some people that may be a little bit, contentious, because some people think
Yeah.
that all feelings are valid. I don't necessarily, believe that. I believe that all feelings are feelings. And you talk your kids through
Yeah.
things. Why do you think you felt that way? If everyone thought like this or felt like this, how would this impact, some aspect of life? And how do you think, if you followed your instincts based on your feelings, you know how are you going to maintain a good relationship? And so, as I said earlier, you ask them key questions to help them
Yeah.
reflect and navigate their own thought life so that they themselves can make some critical decisions that are long lasting. Because as parents, if we continue to be authoritarian and telling them what to think and
Mm-hmm.
telling them what to do, those things can be easily replaced if they're not deep rooted, if they're not like well learned. So I think all of these are really the complexities, and that's why
Yeah.
we say that parenting is so like it's daunting. It's absolutely daunting.
Oh
Well,
my.
And like I said on a post earlier, like and no matter
Right.
what you learn, you still feel like you're inadequate as a parent, right?
yeah,
Because there's no handbook, there's no manual, and
no.
every child is different, and navigating that is incredibly complex. And so for me, I lean on my faith at some points because it doesn't matter what principles you try to teach or what things you try to instill. At some point, I believe in the power of prayer for my kids, in
Mhm.
helping them to develop into adults that can really contribute, that are really impactful
Mhm.
in terms of their
Mhm.
life.
Yeah. I would
Awesome.
add to that. Sorry to
Yeah.
cut you, Jamie. Like create community. Um, like
Yes.
I know, and and I have these conversations. Sometimes I'm daunted by something that's happening with my children, and I say, "What do you do? Like, how did you deal with that?" And so create community with and create allyship with the teachers and the principals and the
Wonderful point.
and the coaches and the guiders and my children are quite busy on purpose. My mother used to keep me very busy because I would get so tired. I wouldn't have time to cause trouble because I'd be too tired from being busy doing extracurricular things. But I say that to say that you create that almost network because you aren't always going to be there, right? And so all you can
Yes.
ask is that anybody that comes in contact is somebody that's also on the same team as you. So even if they have an understanding of how you operate as a parent, they can be
Mm-hmm.
there when you're not there, right? And we need to accept that we're not always going to be there and we don't always have the full picture. We
Exactly.
have to count and trust on others to stand in the gap at times and
Absolutely.
not to be afraid to reach out for that help when you need
Mm-hmm.
it, right? There's no need, as I said, I rebuke things like perfection and I want to be authentic, I want to be truthful, and I will do whatever. I have no ego when it comes to what is required to help my children, right?
Wow.
Yes.
And
Wow.
I'm
Wow.
absolutely loving the discussion, and I think we're in sync because my follow-up question would have been, how can parents, collaborate with the schools and the communities and teachers to ensure the growth and the development of their children? How what role does the PTA play, and how would you like to see that function and evolve?
yeah, I like Jam's comment. I want to give up parenting at least 3 times a
Yeah,
day. I'm
yeah.
like,
Let me put it up that time.
girl, I I debate on the drive to the school. But then what would life be? You know what I mean? We have,
Oh
I
my
think about,
days.
my children are now 11 and 13. So I
Mm-hmm.
always realize that I've had more time with them than I will have, right? Because they're soon, I would say in at least the next, be probably less than 10 years, my children will be off to post-secondary education and doing whatever they're doing. Um, and I have less time with them, and the time I have with them and the dynamics change in the relationship. So yeah, like it's when you as you get comfortable in one stage, you're out of that stage into a new stage, you
Yeah.
know.
Right.
And so I think you really do have to figure out how to embrace the journey at every point because it never is the same.
Yeah.
Um, Lead with love, as
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of patience and prayer, and get your tribe right. I mean, my daughter's a gymnast, Sometimes I'm sitting with the other, gymnastics moms and dads, and we're sitting there just trying to figure out things about, navigating the kids and getting them from here to there. And I tell people all the time, I'm an Uber and I'm an Uber Eats, you know, um, because I'm either driving them to one place, driving them to get food, driving to get the food to bring
Right.
food home. Um, but we still, there's so much that is rich in the experience, but it's changing.
Yeah.
It's a lot,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
we have a real deep rooted responsibility
Yeah.
to figure out how to be, how to help them along. And so I lean in on people who just know a bit more than I do, about things, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
afraid to ask questions. And I would
Right.
say that to any parent, don't ever feel afraid to ask. Fight for your children, because it's 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 a very, very dynamic and changing world, and you're not always going to know what the
What
challenge
to do?
is
Yeah.
like. You sometimes you're not even going to know it's a challenge until it's upon you. um,
Yeah.
so you just have to be resilient.
No, definitely, definitely. And I think this is why when we think about education, and there are three things, and that I always say that really impacts a student achievement. We have the quality of the teaching, we have student motivation, and we have parental involvement. And
Mm-hmm.
so at Smart Term, we've been intentional in building features that create this this partnership between parents and teachers to keep students on track, because it's you can't do it alone. Like, the teacher can't be at school trying to instill certain values, help the child to learn, etc. And then they go home and the parents drop the ball. And likewise,
Right.
parents can't be you know trying to help their kids, and then they go to school and they're not getting a good education. So I think the parent and the teacher are two super important influences, and I think they all need to come together to ensure and that the kids stay on track. And you know in terms of it, you know, the adage, that says that it takes a village, absolutely on point, right? And I reflect upon a theory, and by a guy called Yuri Bronfenbrenner, in terms of, what's called the ecological systems theory in terms of human development in
Mm-hmm.
general. And I think is applicable for us as parents and the teachers, because as kids grow up, we realize that their biggest influences can be found in what is called the microsystem. These are the relationships, the home, the school, the church, the community,
Yeah.
in terms of helping to shape kids. And it's not the same when we were growing up. When we were growing up, it felt like almost every home had the same rules. It felt like almost every home had the same set of values and beliefs. And so, regardless of whether you were home with your parent or whether you were on the street and the neighbors saw you, it felt like, yeah, and there was some level of consistency. Now it's so different.
Mhm.
And so one of the challenges we have as parents is responding to this question. Okay, so and so does this, or my
Right.
mom allows her to do this. Why can't I do it? And um,
Exactly.
we have to navigate that with our kids. So having a relationship, talking to our kids regularly, depending on the age, being able to pitch the conversations depending on their stage of development is so important, because if you take your eye, it's like driving, you take your eye off the road for a second and they're gone. Right? And so we have to be vigilant where this is concerned, and it does indeed take
Mm-hmm.
a family, a village, a community. That support system needs to be in place, because you can't be the only positive influence in your kid's life. So absolutely, definitely super important.
Brilliantly said. I wouldn't even add it.
Awesome.
I would just add
Awesome.
an extra full stop and
And
exclamation mark.
All right, and taking us back to the point of a village raising a child, and we're coming up on our hour, so we're just asking our audience to bear with us a few minutes more. In terms of you know the role of parent teachers association meetings and that engagement and interaction between parents and teachers, and how would you like to see that evolve in today's world? Because I can remember going to school, primary, secondary school, my parents would hardly even go to PTA, and when they do, maybe it's once a week or once for the month, and there isn't really any real action, coming out of some of those meetings. So, as parents, wanting to see your child grow and develop, and the environment in which they are in outside of the home, how
Hmm.
do you see that role evolving?
It's very important. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
very, very, very important. And I'll say this: every school on the planet is under resourced. I've never listen. I've been in this industry for over 20 years. I've never met a school that says we have enough money, we have enough people. Never, right? And so the role, and it's different based on the school, but generally PTAs are PTAs are very important for fundraising activities, and
Hmm.
these fundraising activities help the school
Hmm.
to extend their programming, to provide certain opportunities for our kids that are
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
important, right? And for them
Hmm.
to be exposed to certain skills or to certain learnings that are important for their
Hmm.
holistic development.
Hmm.
And I work with a lot of principals, and they're so there's they value school culture,
Yeah.
and so forth. So being a part of that is super important, because you want our kids to love their schools and to have access to the different skills and different competencies, and be exposed to different career choices, and
Hmm.
so forth. And a lot of the work of the PTA is really helping to drive the culture and driving the programming at school. So I think it's so important.
I agree. It's critically important. I think what I would say though is it needs to be more strategic.
Hmm.
So I think the school itself needs to kind of determine um, what the focus of the PTA should be. I think sometimes the PTA is doing certain things and then the school's doing others. I think, we need to think more strategically about how you use the time and sometimes money and influence of the parents to get things done. But it starts with having, a principal and head teachers who kind of have a vision for what they want the school to do and then be able to share and articulate that with a PTA that can then deliver on key aspects of it. I know that sounds very much like organizational behavior, business stuff 101, but it is to a certain extent, right? You want to be strategic in how you in what you get done. Um, because yes, every school's under resourced. The ministries of education, they have less and less to work with, but the needs of students are becoming so diverse and so
Correct.
dynamic
Correct.
that they need to be creative, right? And I would even go even further. We need to also figure out ways to tap into our diaspora because you have people here talking about, oh, I miss the accents and I feel like I'm home. People of
Yeah.
the diaspora, we
Yes.
need you. We
Yes,
need
we
you.
do.
Adopt a school, adopt a
Yeah, but
class,
we need a
you
mechanism.
know?
Though. We need a mechanism for
Well,
them
I
to.
I leave that to the technical people,
Ah,
right?
Yes, I'm
I
yes,
seeing
leave
the
that
birth
to
of
the
something
technical
really
people.
great to tap into our diaspora. So,
yeah,
Yes.
and alumni, and which
And
include
alumni,
a lot.
yes. And
Yeah,
yeah.
alumni sometimes from the diaspora, right? Because it could be your
correct.
primary school, your secondary school, oh gosh, even your nursery school. All of them need things, right? And now they need heightened services. They need touch screens and digital chalkboards and it's how do we get all of these things? We can't expect the governments and the ministries, they can't do it all, right? They're trying,
No.
but they can't do it all. So I
Absolutely.
think what we need to do is figure out how to mobilize um, resources. And so, yeah, we
Mhm.
have to find creative ways to do it. So I push that back to the talented technical people to figure a way out, to figure a way for us to do that. Because I know there's people, if you said to them, would you want to give, a small
Yeah.
subscription to, to your primary school? I know I would give a bit of change to Point Fortin Roman Catholic school. I would have no
Yes.
problem doing that,
Absolutely.
because you remember what that school did. You have a history, you have a passion, you remember it and you want to celebrate it, you want to preserve it. So we just
Definitely.
have to figure out the
Exactly.
mechanism to do so.
Definitely. Definitely.
Idol, you want to touch on this or?
Well, I think, I mean, I echo the same sentiments. I
Yeah.
echo the same sentiments. We need to tap into, whatever resources that are available and to us because, you know, our kids, I mean, we live in a world where we are pursuing, aggressively pursuing, personalized education. But in order to do that, you need technology because, there's just not enough capacity in our schools to cater to the different learning styles, the different intelligences, and I really believe that every child has potential. I believe there's a purpose, every child, but being able to discover that throughout the educational journey is tricky. And so, and I work with a lot of schools. So I see some schools, they're trying their very best, but they just don't have the resources they need.
Yeah.
And so, no, definitely, I think we have to tap into our alumni, we have to tap into our diaspora. But I also think there needs to be a mechanism where, it could be seamless and simplified way to actually tap into those opportunities.
Mhm.
Definitely, I agree.
Yeah, I truly believe that it's a powerful thing if we can, tap into the diaspora and, have them pour back into our Caribbean youths. Schools can be better off. There's so much development can come from initiatives like these. Um, I really want to take it back to, Smart Term. I know you spoke about what Smart Term is doing, but at Smart Term, we really create a platform, create a platform for our key stakeholders such as parents and students, governments, schools and teachers. I really want you to kind of outline, Idel, how can parents really utilize our platform, to engage the schools, engage with teachers, as well as even engage in what their child is doing within the school.
Oh, a great question. So, as I said, Smart Term values the role of the parent in the child's educational and learning experiences. And so, from out of the box, in every Smart Term deployment, we have the parent portal. It's not an add-on. It's not something that you have to pay extra for because we see it as a core feature.
Yeah.
So, any school that's on Smart Term, there's the ability to add parents, and parents have access, continuous access, because I don't believe that parents should need to wait till the end of term to know that their child was absent 17 times. You know what I mean? I believe that, there needs to be this regular, accountability of their kids and communication and working together with teachers to ensure that the kids stay on track and that they're doing. And if they're falling behind, then, we need to get involved. And during the pandemic, we saw that. Like, parents
Yeah.
got super involved, super proud of all the. I mean, this is a shout out to all the parents who just, roll up their sleeves and really, even if they weren't. I saw parents who were not even tech savvy become like, like
Yeah.
technicians helping their kids to solve problems. Parents really were superheroes during the pandemic. We couldn't survive the pandemic, academically, if it wasn't for parents. So, that was, I saw that, and, it was really inspiring for me. But also, as Smart Term continues to evolve, we are working with content providers, because we want to also democratize education, right? Education doesn't only happen in the classroom, in those four walls. So we want to democratize education and make it available to everyone. And so we are providing, so early next year in Q1, we will be launching a new platform that parents can, they can go in, they can look for, courses, they can look for materials, to help their kids. Because most parents, they want to help. And sometimes they feel helpless. And so we want to bridge that gap and provide tooling to help them drive academic excellence for their kids. And it's a core part of our roadmap, because as we think about the impact of the work we do, we think about the kids, and we realize that the role of the parent is super important. So we want to really tap into that energy and tap into those opportunities to help our kids identify, navigate, discover, discern their skills, their talents, their abilities, their calling, their purpose, and be able to do it whether their school offers it or not. And so
Exactly.
the future is going to be based on the future of learning is in personalized learning and democratization of learning. And so smart term is definitely going to be a part of that innovation.
Just on this topic, I see Jam Jam is asking, does the platform only extend to the Caribbean?
Not at all. Anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. Doesn't Smart Terms supports any locale, any language, So it doesn't matter where in the world you are. If your school is interested in using Smart Term, feel free. Go to the website smartterm.io, and you can click the button that says and talk to sales, and you'll be connected to one of our sales team members, and they'll take you through
Mhm.
um, and the process. So no, it doesn't only extend to the Caribbean.
Mhm.
Wonderful, wonderful. The world is evolving and, technology is advancing. So why not utilize technology in not only education in all aspects of our lives, but today we're talking about education. So yes,
Absolutely.
Smart Term is here, to work with our schools, to work with governments, to provide a seamless integration for, helping schools to operate efficiently online. Thank you so much for that question, Jamila. And as we wind down, it's about that time. As we wind down, I want to share this comment from Sandra. And Sandra is saying, a village raising a child is so important, especially for parents who struggle with dealing
Oh,
with balancing work life and parenting. Very, very important, wonderful comment there,
as
Absolutely.
a
Sandra.
working mom, I attest to that, and it's having people in your blind spot. My
Yeah.
Yeah,
daughter was 5 years old and she needed glasses, and her grade one teacher came to my office to tell me, I think you need to test your daughter's eyes. My daughter's 13 and she's been wearing glasses ever since.
wonderful, wonderful.
We need to have people in our blind spot.
Right.
And so it really does take the village is changing, um, but it's still the principle, I think, still remains the same. And in
Mhm.
terms of smart term, what I celebrate with it is there's an ecosystem out there that can work for us. If you try to do what smart term did, you probably need 4 or 5 different applications to do it. Um, and you still not even know how they would ever integrate and work together. But I think the ability to have the student, the teacher, administrators, and everybody working together within the
Mhm.
same ecosystem, be able to speak the same language, and you get further faster. And I think right now, if there's one theme we leave with, is that things are moving extremely quickly. We
Yeah,
need to keep up. I don't even know if we can be ahead because it's changing so fast, but we certainly need to endeavor to keep up. And I have no problem celebrating any tool that helps me do that.
Awesome.
Because I think, as I said, there's no ego in parenting. There's not. You want to give your children the best opportunity possible. And so we just have to all do our best um, in that endeavor. So it's been a real pleasure.
Yes, fully agree with that, Fanta. And to our viewing audience, we are so grateful, so thankful for you all being with us up until this time. This session has been an amazing session. We learned so much strategies and so much different ways on how the role and function of a parent is evolving, how we as parents can look at different strategies, look at different techniques, even tools on how to bring up our children. So I want to pass it over to Idols for closing remarks.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you for doing an excellent job as a moderator,
Oh,
and for
thank you.
coordinating this event. I think it's super impactful, and I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot as
Mhm.
well. And so this has been time well spent. All right. From smart terms perspective, we continue to evolve, we continue to innovate, and we will continue to innovate in the foreseeable future.
Mhm.
Because we believe that our platform and the work we do, not the platform, the work we do, is super important for advancing the cause of our citizens in the Caribbean, and as we expand even across the world. I think it's important in shaping the future. I don't believe the future is just something you walk into. Like the future is already set in stone, and we just walk into it. We wake up one morning and we're in the future. I don't believe that. I believe that each day, the decisions we make, the passions and that we pursue, and all of these wonderful things we achieve, I think we continue and to shape the future. And that's what Smart Term exists to do. And so we focus on really just fostering an educational ecosystem that is cohesive and interactive and purpose driven, because at the end of the day, digital transformation, these things, are people driven,
Yeah.
right? They have to be driven by people, driven by purpose, and technology is only there to enable the change, to augment it, to enhance it, But it's really about the people, and so I'm really passionate about seeing my region develop. And so the work we did, we started with the Caribbean. We have our sights set on really expanding into outside of the region, but our heart will always be in the Caribbean. So for all of you persons who took the time to
Mhm.
listen and to comment and support, we just want to say thank you, and I want to say thank you to Fanta as well. Uh,
Yes,
excellent, excellent,
as
excellent.
always.
Thoroughly enjoyed your participation and contribution as well. So yeah, look forward to hearing from you guys at any point. Feel free to like and subscribe to any of our
Mhm.
platforms. We're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on
Instagram,
Twitter.
Twitter.
So whatever platform you spend some time on, feel free to be a part of the community, to be a part of the movement. But that's what this is really. At the end of the
Exactly.
day, sometimes you get so confused and focused on technology, but it's not about technology. It's about a movement to really impact and empower, the future of our region, and to really help our kids to maximize their potential. So thank you again, and have a
Yes. Amazing. And we will close out with this last comment from Jam Jam. I'm taking away so much from the conversation. Thoroughly enjoyed it tonight. Thank you guys so much.
Oh,
it's been a
God
pleasure.
Yeah,
bless
I think that's what it is about, just sharing the knowledge, sharing the information. And we really want to hear from you. We really want to hear your perspective on things. How can we improve education? How can, different things. So I just want you all to reach out to our social media, follow us, comment, send us a message, send us an email, and we will definitely connect with you all. So thank you once again. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.